Welcome to Black Talent Talks, the show where we get people who are killing it in their work lives to share how they got there. We're going in with the highs, the lows, the shade and the tea. We're giving you the inspiration, the advice and some real talk on how to become the CEO of your career. Please remember to leave us a 5-star review, subscribe and share if you like what you hear and you know someone who needs to hear this. I'm Leah.
And I'm Sheryl Miller. And today we're chatting with 3 amazing guests. So give it up for Richard Loftus.
Yay!
Richard is a highly experienced and creative marketing director who has spent many years working at the intersection of arts venues and the charity sector. He has overseen major brand reinventions, including the launch of B Music, the charity responsible for Birmingham's iconic Town Hall and Symphony Hall, which is the building we are currently recording from. Next up, we have Eric Sterling. Give it up for Eric. Grand Rising, Eric. You knew that was coming, didn't you?
I suspected it might.
I think that saying is going to stay with you for a bit. Anyway, former Clubhouse people will recognise Eric's voice from the very famous Daily Show in the room called 9am in London, I think it was called. Eric is founder and director of Sterling Academy Youth. He is a legal scholar and an educator by background. Sterling Academy Youth provides a safe space for young people to tackle social issues whilst empowering them to be confident with their voice. Through community partnerships and workshops, over 14,000 young people have gained skills and benefited from the workshops. And last but not least, of course, David McQueen.
Myself, yeah.
David's cheering for himself. How can I introduce David McQueen in a way that does him justice? So, his LinkedIn byline says he's a compassionate provocateur, whatever that means. We might get into that. He started off life in finance, but we all know that the grey-suited world of accountancy couldn't keep David for long. He's a leadership coach, boardroom facilitator and CEO whisperer, an outstanding speaker who has literally spoken all over the world. He also has his own podcast, The David McQueen Show.
That's right.
And he has worked with some of the biggest global brands, including HSBC, RBS, Virgin, and many, many others. He's a family man, and if you follow him on LinkedIn, you will see that he posts with his heart and not just his head. Apart from Idris Elba, he really is one of the UK's best exports.
Oh, you better know this.
Welcome to all of you. Thank you for joining us. Before we get into the conversation, we're going to just take you down memory lane back to the Black Talent Awards, which you were all involved in different guises. So we'll start off with you, Eric. So Eric, you were judging. So how was it for you in terms of the judging process and then the awards as well?
So, for me, really, really great experience to be involved in the sifting of the finalists, having to discuss with the other judges some really outstanding candidates who was the most deserving to be put forward for the finalists. And it was such a tough decision. Yeah. And it was really great to interview those finalists and to sort of meet them and see that delight on their face at the awards show, which was an incredible link up. So yeah, overall it was such a phenomenal experience.
Amazing. And David, you're a judge as well. How was it for you?
I got bullied. So I was on the table with 4 women and they bullied me, all right? And I went in there and I was like, I'm the oldest, I'm going to show them, like, I've got the experience, let me talk. They bullied me. Literally, they pushed me to the corner and I'm okay with that. I've had counselling and medicine since then, so it's all good. But in all honesty, it was really good, really enjoyed the experience. It was nice to actually have something like this in Birmingham because so much of this stuff tends to be really London-centric. So having a space to be able to be part of that conversation in Birmingham, I thought was really powerful. And again, I said, you lot got, well, I'm here, aren't I? So you lot have got me. I'm part of this movement. And I'm really proud of what the team has achieved. And yeah, just looking forward to not being bullied again, but looking forward to seeing what the rest of the future actually looks like with this. But really enjoyed it.
And what about the show? How was the show for you?
Show was great. So me and my wife came. It was good. We won't talk about the after party for the moment, but the actual show itself was amazing. I just thought the timing, the delivery, and I just think it was really just nice just to see all those people who won the award. You could just see they were really excited and really, they felt really privileged to be in that space to actually receive them. So it was really good. But yeah, if we do go to we can talk about the after party another day because we did, that was good. I enjoyed that as well. I'm looking forward to the after party this year.
I definitely remember David at the after party. David definitely threw down some shapes on that dance floor.
It took me about 3 weeks for my knees to recover, but yeah.
And Richard, so Richard was, was kind enough to help us out in all things kind of like marketing and pull together the brochure and kind of help to coordinate the media room. But how was it for you?
Oh, it was awesome. It was such an experience, and the talent in that room was insane. Not just the people winning awards, but, note benders beforehand that were performing as people came in, and Namiwa, who was performing on stage as well. That song that she performed was sick. So yeah, it was just such a vibe.
I don't remember seeing you on the dance floor. No, you left early, didn't you?
Yeah, I ducked out early. Nobody needs to see that.
Okay, so we want to get to know you a little bit better and we want to break the ice a little bit. So I'm looking for like a funny career moment. So it could be like your worst job or like the worst interview you've ever had. Just anything that you think is funny and you want to share.
Funny ha-ha.
Richard, I'm going to start with you.
Stop it.
Richard was looking at me like, I'm going first. Now, mate, you're first.
Well, I said before we started recording, I don't think mine's funny ha-ha, but I have had those awful... I did a whole PowerPoint presentation for a second job interview. Spoiler alert, I got the job at the end. But the entire PowerPoint presentation failed at every single click, to the point where I had a slide that was a black background with white writing on top, and that black background did not show. So it was just an empty white slide. And I'm just having to, thankfully, I went to drama school, so I'm used to rehearsing these things. So I knew exactly what was on it, but I am literally talking through an empty PowerPoint slide like I'm giving it everything and just hoping and hoping and hoping. I came out of that interview and I was like, I have not got that job. I have not got that. Then I got a call later that day and I did get the job because they were impressed with how I'd handled such an awful situation.
I love that.
So even out of those awful situations, there's a top tip for you.
Fantastic.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you.
I feel like you gave us
two
a
for
funny
the price
moment.
of one. Yeah.
Yeah, you gave us a funny moment and a top tip, so we love that. Okay, and Eric, I'm going to come to you next.
Wow, this is such a hard question to answer. So what is it? Most embarrassing job?
Yeah, like your worst job or your worst interview or just a funny moment in your career.
Yeah, so what worst job? Probably like maybe a job at college. Like, so I did like a market research job for like 3 years all throughout A-levels, and it was sort of like ringing people up and carrying out these surveys over the phone, and random phone calls. You would ring people who are sort of like in a good mood and a bad mood, who are hopping out of a shower. A bad job. It kind of doesn't really sound that funny to share.
Do you know what? I thought you were going to take it somewhere with the people coming out of the shower moment, but
Take it there.
It is a family show.
Because you didn't have video film them times. So talk us through it.
It was definitely a laugh. It was definitely like, it was a job with a laugh, and it was a job with like really good banter. I guess more recently, it's sort of like in teaching, a bad experience, a kid calling me dad, maybe a child sort of saying, I don't know, just impulsively.
That's not bad for you,
why
but
is that
that
bad?
kid is going home like,
Yeah.
How did you respond? I'm not sorry. I know you said conversation. How did you respond to that?
Just sort of like play it off.
That's so funny.
Yeah,
wow.
I get, but maybe actually in schools you come across like a lot of funny moments. Kids will sort of like, the common question is, are you Raheem Sterling? Like, don't look anything like him, but we share a name. But visiting schools, I've actually like had teacher staff sort of like outside of the classroom, sort of asking questions, sort of like, are you a celebrity? I've had kids like ask for like autographs.
I love that.
But I often just say to them, perhaps, and I just kind of like keep them sort of like interested and intrigued, and they sort of like keep them sort of like plugged in the learning and stuff.
Yeah.
So
That's so
I don't know if
funny.
that's a funny or embarrassing or interesting.
You need to
but-
Do you
play
like
up
a
to it.
dedication on your autograph? Are you like doing the what's your name?
I just feel kind of
best
like a
wishes.
bit like a cheat. I'm just sort of like, I'll give it to you at the end, almost like hoping that they'll forget, and I'll just like give a little scribble. But
You should get a hoodie that says, we don't all look alike. All right, then.
perhaps that's a good one. Yeah. So yeah, sorry it wasn't better.
No,
but, yeah.
that's fine. We had a lot of laughs. And David, I'm going to come to you now.
Okay, and you know what? I'm glad I went last. So I'm gonna. So this is straight up. It was my first management role. I was working in accounts, and what actually happened? I was lifting boxes, and I ripped my trousers. So by the seam, just by the crotch, and I ripped my trousers, but I didn't realize it. I was sitting on my desk, and things felt a little breezy, but I wasn't really. I just thought, okay, just a little rip in the trousers. And I turned, I was on my chair, and I turned to speak to one of my assistants, and she says, Dave. And I said, yeah. She said, you're hanging out. And I thought we were talking about, like, are we going somewhere? She said, you're hanging out. I said, what do you mean? She said, you're hanging out. And I looked down, and I was literally hanging out in my trousers.
Oh, no.
So I had to tuck stuff back in, and then go and sew it up, and then keep it moving.
Oh, wow.
I blushed, no one saw, but the fact is that was the most crazy story that happened to me, yeah. And my wife will never let me forget it.
And when did HR get involved?
After I left.
Oh my gosh.
Glad it was only one person, but anyway, we keep it moving. Yeah, we keep it moving.
Okay, so there is some popular but controversial career advice out there. So this is the part of the show where we're going to bust some myths and ask you whether you think this popular advice is fact or fiction. So according to a recent survey by Reed, in the UK, the average age workers experience career contentment is the age of 32. And it takes an average of 3 job moves before British workers find career contentment. So do you agree or disagree with this week's controversial career advice, which is you are too old for a career change after the age of 30? So, you know what, Richard, I'm going to start with you again.
No. I mean, you're never too old for a career change in anything. Like, I'm not even buying any of that. I'm not buying any of that. If you want to do it, just do it. Like, we only live once. We've got one life, right? Why, if you are not happy and you have got an ambition for something else, just go and get it. Do not be fretting about all of the other stuff. Just go and get it. And if you can't get it immediately because you've got, like, you know, a family or you've got financial issues, then side hustle it until you are ready to. Like, do not sit and wait because some stupid survey is telling people that, like, you can't do it once you hit a certain age. That is mad.
Have you had any sort of major changes or pivots in your career that you can think of?
I mean, recently I had a bit of a pivot. About, you know, in the last 12 months, I took my first job that wasn't in the arts and music sector, but was still in the charity sector. So it was a slight pivot. But I'm, you know, in addition to that, though, I'm still doing all of those stuff that I love. I still make time to do stuff with Black Voices, who are a female a cappella quintet who I love supporting. And I cannot shout about them enough. Like, they are incredibly talented and they deserve the world. And, you know, they are a great example as well of pivoting and doing stuff on, you know, doing extra stuff. Like, in addition to touring as musicians, they also secured lottery funding for Grosvenor Road Studios, which is the oldest recording studios in Birmingham, and that is their home. And they've been running that for years and turning that into community hub. So yeah, you can always do it. You can always do more.
Yeah,
Cool.
definitely. Eric, what do you think?
Yeah, I would love to know what the careers are of these people who have put together these statistics, because I find you know that to be really limiting sort of findings. I think once upon a time that might have been the case when people sort of enter the career and sort of like stuck at it. But I think we're very much now in a world of a portfolio style way of living and careers which kind of like mesh together. Like, you've done a bit here and you find that you develop certain strengths and skills which lend itself in other areas, and almost a bit like a jungle gym type career sort of approach.
Yeah.
And I'd encourage that. I'd encourage it, you know, with good planning and sometimes even with impulse, if it's something that works with you well, as long as you've, you know, not sort of getting evicted and not falling behind on your mortgage and stuff like that. But yeah, within reason, 33 is so young, you know, 50's the new 20, 60's the new 30. Do you know what I mean?
I thought
Yeah.
50 was a new 30, but I'll take 20. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, just look at look at the people in our community. Like, everyone's just sort of like, yeah. So complete BS, if we're allowed to say that.
You're allowed. And
Yeah.
what about you in terms of, because I know that you've sort of had a couple of different paths, so just sort of talk through some of the sort of key switches you've made.
Yeah, happy to. And I guess I'm a good example of that. So I started off in law, which I began sort of as an undergraduate, and then found myself in the civil service, which was a really interesting environment to work in. Learnt loads, worked with ministers over in Whitehall. It's some really great exposure and experience, sort of like quite early in my career as well. Lots about it that I liked, but then realised that teaching, maybe being a parent as well, sort of like drove me to think about the pedagogy and those sorts of areas. So I found myself teaching citizenship, which has kind of like a legal component to it, but more around justice and rights and social activism and stuff like that. So I kind of then found myself in that area. And then more recently, I've sort of taken a bit of all of that and set up a small business in education. So I'm still sort of working with schools, and I'm still sort of like using law in terms of delivering workshops around discrimination and other areas around equality. And let's see what comes next. I'm sort of like really excited about what I could be doing in terms of growth and scaling up, as well as life.
Yeah, cool. And David, I'm going to come to you.
I think it's trash. All right, I'm just saying that. That advice is
Don't
trash.
sit on the fence.
Whoever
David.
came up with that is absolutely trash. And they were really sad. They were having a bad day. And they should drink more sorrel. Or they'd drink some more juice with fizzy pop in it, because no. And the reason why I say that is because we don't do linear careers anymore. People just don't do that. That ended a long time ago.
Yeah.
And I'm of the belief that, when you think about your career, it's a big C. It's just about exploring all the different things that you're good at. So I give myself as an example. My parents were from the Caribbean. So when I was doing education, I only had the choice of the migrant 4 that I could do, right? It was medicine, law, engineering, or something in finance and banking, because your parents weren't having you do it. I wanted to be an artist. Let me break it down. You go back to a Caribbean or African parents' house, I want to be an artist. They're like, yeah, I'm really happy for you. Go and get a job in the bank. So literally, I'm running my own business. My first career was as an accountant. Did that for 8 years. I enjoyed it as much because I just really wanted to know more about money. Then I got into IT, so I started to do developing, really loved that. Then I said, stuff this, I don't want to work for anybody. Plus I was hanging out in my trousers. And I decided to leave that. And I went and I did a little bit of project management, and I enjoyed that for a little bit, helped some stuff. And then I was like, but I've always loved youth work. And I've been a youth worker since I was 15. So I thought, let me just start my own education company. So I started up an education company, started speaking and working in schools across the country. But I also realized when I was doing that, a lot of adults were asking me for career advice. So on the one hand, I'm doing schools. On the other hand, I'm being a career coach. Doing the career coach, and people said, oh, you're really good at speaking. Can you be a presenter? Do you help me with presentations? So I went up doing a presentation coach, did that for a few years. And then somebody said to me, oh, some of our leaders need more help. And I was like, okay, let me be a leadership coach. I've been doing that for 5 years. 2 years ago, someone said to me, do you know what? I think you're really good because you know the stuff around finance. You should be an investor. So I've started being an angel investor. I'm 53 years old and I've got another 4 careers left in me, all right, before I leave this space. So that is trash. You can do what you want. Go out there and really find out what you love. Find out the bit that gives you fire, that makes you wake up in the morning, makes you go, right, I really love doing this. And it might be two, as you said, a portfolio. It doesn't have to be one job. Do what you love, get paid for it. That's important, right? Don't go out there and be a broke ass. Go out there and get paid for it, but you can do what you want.
Yeah.
Honestly, especially in this environment, do what you want.
Yeah, and there's some, in terms of what you were saying there's something about, following what your heart feels at the time almost, or your heart and your skills, in that combination.
100%,
Yeah.
100%. But my knees tell me, my head tells me that I can still be a burlesque dancer, but my knees say, hell no, Dave. Hold your corner and watch from afar. But, honestly, it is really about, I love what I do.
Yeah.
And every single career that I've had, I've enjoyed, even as an accountant, and even I enjoy getting up doing that because it intrigued me. I'm a kind of I like solving puzzles and I like working with people. Those are the two things. Give me a really difficult situation and give me some really difficult people. And I love being in that space. So whatever fits into that, I'm good to go.
I love it. I love it. Right. So we're going
And I think,
Go ahead,
sorry,
Eric.
I think I've now been inspired.
Come on
even
now.
more so by
Preach.
David, and like just to sort of like banish this statistic. Now I need to go into leadership. Now I need to go and train adults.
You
now
got-
I need to
you
kind of
got my
take it
number,
down.
bruv.
Yeah. So yeah. So,
Well, you've got a good 50 or so years more.
yeah. How
to
old
do
am I?
this.
Like,
Youngster.
10? Oh, thank you.
Right, so we've kind of talked about how careers don't tend to go in a straight line. You know, they weave in and out, and there are ups and downs. So let's just focus in on some of the sort of pivotal moments and maybe some of the challenges and struggles, because you know life is not show reel, you know, and it's not all rainbows and unicorns. So let's talk about some of maybe the more challenging moments. So I'm going to throw it out there in terms of, you know, have there been any really pivotal moments or challenges or struggles that you've faced, or any particular mistakes that you've made along the way, and what did you learn from them? I'm going to start with Eric.
Whoa, how deep do we want to go?
Look, the box of tissues is on the table, so just go for it.
Yeah. Challenges. I think for me, and I guess it's important to kind of like say that like age is something which helps us to kind of become more experienced and helps us to sort of like deal with adversities, and sometimes your experiences at a particular point means that maybe your responses to situations might be different at a different stage in life. So when I kind of like, I think I mentioned earlier around sort of like starting off my career in the civil service, which was great, you know, phenomenal, really rich experience. I don't think I was quite ready to be sort of, you know, the only person who was black, who was below the age of, I don't know, like 25, working predominantly in a white middle class environment. And it wasn't because I wasn't good enough, because the work that I was doing, you know, the feedback was strong, but it was more to do with the treatment of my colleagues towards me, which was quite tough, particularly when you sort of like worked quite hard academically and you sort of think, well, I'm here now, I'm gonna sort of like just move onwards and upwards. So I think the experience there wasn't great, and it kind of left me sort of wishing that perhaps the people I was working with had more diverse experiences at different points in their life. And it did then kind of inspire me to go into teaching, because I actually wanted to work with people who didn't get an experience to have, you know, a black teacher who make up 2% of the population, and black men even less so. So yeah, I think that was like an experience. But I guess the positives I took from that was my legal background was really helpful to kind of challenge the situation and to ultimately successfully take it to a tribunal, unfortunately. But fortunately enough, you know, I won and received quite a bit of money from it. So that was kind of like the positive that came out of quite a negative situation, but definitely a triumphant outcome in terms of the journey and life.
Yeah.
So that was a bit maybe unexpected, but I thought, you know, the question deserves a real answer.
The whole thing about knowing whether to speak up and like take something formal, and you know, I'd be interested to see what the other guys think as well. What advice would you give somebody who's maybe going through those sorts of things in terms of whether they should, you know, speak up and raise something, or whether they shouldn't? Almost like, what's the, you know, to me, because often people are in those sort of difficult situations in the work environment, and sometimes they think, oh, if I raise it, it's going to be like a black mark against me, and all of those sorts of things. So maybe they're...
Yeah, so it's funny. So there's a theory on conflict, and there's almost, I'm just going to pull it up because I shared it with a friend recently. But there are situations when you may decide to deal with conflict by avoiding conflict. You might decide to deal with conflict by facing it heads on. You may decide to sort of like collaborate. And I guess it sometimes depends on where you are in your life. So I'm just pulling it up right now, conflict of theory. So you've got avoidance, which is sort of low cooperation and low assertiveness. You could be competitive with that conflict, which is sort of like high assertiveness. you could accommodate. So I guess depending strategically where someone is in their career, they might decide to sort of like slug it out. I think for me, being the first member of my family to go to university, sort of very sort of like disappointed and having this sort of like fire of tackling injustice, I kind of felt it was perfect for me to kind of take on this challenge. I felt like I had the right background, I had the right skill set, and I wasn't prepared to kind of let a situation which could have been dealt with a lot better, because there was opportunities for it to be dealt with better, but instead it was just sort of like brushed to one side, and I was just sort of like, well, actually you're not going to get away with that with myself. So I think for me it was a good point. So I guess it's contextual, and I guess people at different points might argue that perhaps it's better to be strategic and to ride it out and see how things go, but I don't think it's held me back.
Yeah.
Did you feel lonely? Because you told me I could jump in. Did you feel lonely?
Oh, absolutely. I think the thing about standing up to trouble, it can make you seem like the troublemaker, because essentially you're disrupting the norm. So the nature of working in an environment like that is it then opens up victimization. So then, the work culture shifts, and all of a sudden you're no longer popular, or people aren't necessarily hanging out with you, or, so there's all those sort of like dynamics which you can't necessarily measure or attach to a particular kind, because it's all very intellectual, it's all very sort of those types of microaggressions which did occur. So yeah, 100% I did feel lonely.
Would you have taken the same route again? Would you have taken that approach again, to sort of fight it and take it to a tribunal?
He got money.
Yeah, I think so. I think, do you know what it was? I think, so I took it to I would, and the reason I would is because I had union support up until a particular point, and then I didn't. And then I had the choice of it being thrown out, because I was receiving all these threatening letters from the opponent's side. But I decided to persevere, and I sort of did a lot of work, and literally then ended up representing myself and having to cross-examine my line manager, the director, and their barrister. And it was a lot of work. It was alongside I was doing my PGC and training to become a teacher. Would I do it again? I was definitely exhausted by the end of it. But I'm proud that I did do it, and it's not something I really talk about too often. Yeah. This is probably like the first time I'm sort of like going on paper or going live speaking about it. But I think it's an empowering story to share.
For sure.
And when I have shared it with others,
absolutely.
When I have shared it with others, they've often kind of like had similar reactions like you guys. Yeah. But to go back to the question of loneliness, and I think it can sometimes, particularly at a certain stage, maybe make you feel like you're being the troublemaker and you should sort of. But I think we're living in such a different world. So this was back in over 10 years ago. I think now there's more coverage around discrimination and racism. I didn't even say it was racism, but that's what it was. Yeah.
The reason why I asked as well is because, and the reason why I asked you to share this story is because a lot of people who are doing this, when they hear your story, if I share this with people now, they go, oh my God, me too. This is exactly what happened to me. But people are afraid to talk about it because they think there may be repercussions. And the reason why I asked you about loneliness is because the challenge is, there's so many people when they're going through this kind of sugar honey iced tea, is that they feel that because they are going through it on their own, is there anybody else that they can lean on, or who can give advice or can give that support? Because when you're, again, doing your exam, the emotional, you're a strong character, so getting all those letters, you're like, I'll deal with you, bro. I know my law, I can deal with that. Yeah. Other people will crumble. Other people have nervous breakdowns or burn out or what have you. 100%. And for me, a big part of how you change anything is not to do it as an individual, but to understand how we tap into a system. And so the reason why I raised that there, for me, one of the things that has really driven me as a mentor over the years is like, when I hear stuff, I'm like, reach out, because people just don't like asking. Oh, I don't want to trouble people. Bro, this is your livelihood. So for me, it was important. Like, if you had to go and do that again, I'd be like, yeah, do it, but make sure you do some calls and surround yourself with individuals who will hold you up, who will go, we've got you. In those moments when you feel like I'm about to give up, we'll make sure that we're with you and you keep on persevering through it. That was my kind of my
okay. Yeah, no, 100%.
Yeah, I love that, and thank you for sharing that, Eric, because I think it's really important for people to hear it, and obviously this is what this podcast is about, is people to hear what people have been through, and to know that somebody has gotten through it, come out of the other end, and it's okay.
Yeah.
You know, and as David said, you got a load of money out of it as well.
Yes.
Not that's the motive, but
Exactly.
True.
But that collaborate thing you say as well, I think, you know, going off what you were saying about loneliness, like you can always do that collaboration thing and find people that are going to support you. I mean, Sheryl has been one of those people for me, and I can remember speaking to her about a situation that I had recently, and something she said to me on the phone one day about it. You just said, I can remember talking to you about it and being really upset in the moment, and you just being like, I've got you. And the amount of times that I have played that conversation back, and particularly that saying, and just knowing that no matter what, somebody had my back. And yeah, you've been that person for me. And yeah, finding that, I think, is so important.
Yeah. Amazing. Wow, that was Eric. We went deep.
Sorry.
That's good.
That's good.
That's good. I think it's important.
David, so share with us a pivotal moment, career challenge, career mistakes.
So I've always, I say this all the time. I've always been really outspoken. I just do not take shit from anybody. I just can't. And especially, like I remember in school, I was really fortunate because I was able to straddle across all friendship groups. I could be with the popular kids. I'll be with the goths. I'll be with the kind of like the metalers. I'll be with the reggae boys. I'll be with everybody because I didn't have to tie myself to one group, but I always spoke my mind because I've always been of the belief that if you didn't speak your mind, someone else will speak it for you. And I grew up in a really strong tradition of Pan-Africanism. So in my library, we had like books from Martin Luther King and I wasn't dying for anybody, right? But we had all these books that people were out there and they would speak their truth. And there were two pivotal moments that happened for me in terms of my career. So the first one around speaking my truth was just before 9/11. Yeah, you were born. I'm just checking. I'm just doing the Gen X. I'm just doing the Gen X. Just checking it. All right. I was running an IT business at the time, so I'd left employment because I realized I didn't want to work. Actually, my last employer, I told him about his mother, and I had to leave because before it went to HR. Yeah, I told him. He said something to me. I was like, "Your mother, all right?" And I was going to go into deep things. He was like, "You're going to take me?" I was like, "I'll take you out." I said, "Listen, I'm in IT. I know what you do on your computer when no one's looking. So just." And keep it moving. Anyway, so I left the company and I was making really good money and doing really well, working in central London, living large, and then 9/11 came. And literally I went from earning six figures to nothing. And I remember going out for jobs, and you imagine you're making really, really good money, and the only jobs that were available, like the most that somebody was going to offer at the time was 28 grand. That hurt my pride, and obviously I've got a young family, and I had to sell my house. And I made a decision then. I said to my wife, I said, look, I'm going to sell our house. We did a business before, and we can start and do all over again. I'm going to sell my house. We're going to start from scratch. We're going to start building up in this new career. I'll promise you that I will always look after you. I will always have your back. And it was really interesting because, and I shared this on LinkedIn the other day, we literally bought a house the other day in Aylesbury. And it's the first house we bought in 19 years. And a lot of people have seen us. They've seen me traveling around the world. They see me and what have you. And they're like, oh, Dave, man, you're living large and what have you. And I'm like, I'm doing good. But I wasn't that worried about having a house. It just wasn't a priority for me. But there were so many assumptions that people had that I was having my own home. And one of the things that happened as part of this journey is I've always had a problem in my head about having more money than other people. So, and what I mean by that is that I grew up in a tradition like, money, the love of money is the root of all evil. Why do you have like how much are you charging people to do that? And there was always this kind of, so I would have money, but I would also go, right, I'm not that I want to give it away, but I always want to bless other people with stuff. And I had to kind of like go, well, if I'm really earning really well, I should be able to give back. So I have this thing called my tithe. So 10% of my time and my energy, I give back and I mentor and I support people and don't charge them. But it took that me losing my business and my house, and actually, to be fair, around the time that we lost the business and the house, my wife and I, we lost our second child, so she miscarried. So there was like lots of things happening, and it just really, really shook me. But it also made me realize that while I'm here, I've got a lot to give, and I should never be afraid to ask questions. So I asked lots of people who have built their businesses, what did they do and what did they do really well? And in that space of time, like we put our kids through private school. That was the priority before we had a house. We hadn't built the business, blah, 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 blah. But it really taught me about resilience. And it really taught me around the point I'm making to you is that it was not about me trying to go out there and do it on my own. So I asked loads of, I don't care who you are. If you're younger than me, older than me. If I don't know something, I'm picking up the phone and asking you. You can refuse to take my call or email, but I'll pick up the phone and I'll ask and I'll say, look, and if you need something from me or my network, call me and I'll tap into it. That was the first one because that really taught me resilience. The second one was when Me Too first started, and I realized how badly women's experience was in the workplace. But because I was running my own business, I didn't have that much. So, and obviously, if you ever met my wife, nobody does that to my wife. She's not just slapping down. All right, man, it will take you out. But there were a lot of women who were going through a lot of crap. Not only the sexual abuse, but men not understanding menopause, any of the kind of like reproductive issues around endometriosis and all the rest of it. I kind of went down into this deep rabbit hole, really understanding how can I empower and use my skills to empower women, but making sure that I take a back seat, which is important. And then about a few years later, then we had Black Lives Matter and all the stuff that happened with that. And what it made me realize is that everybody is really, really busy until something really stops you to make you look around. And a lot of really tough conversations came out in 2020, not only around Black lives, but it was around Asians. It was around a lot of my white friends who called me. I'm like, Dave, this thing, white privilege, like, I'm working class. What's this? Like, and I literally had to break down, like, I'm 7 times more likely to be stopped in a car than you are if I'm driving the car. If I go into a hospital, the way I'll get treated around pain management, they assume as a black guy that I can have more pain and they won't give me the medicine in comparison to a white guy. If I go into a room and they ask for a Mr. McQueen, they're probably going to look at you first before they look at me because I get it all the time. And I'm saying to people, I've learnt to navigate that and not hold any grudges or be bitter around it. But I think it's important to make sure that a generation afterwards understand what that looks like as well. How, like, I still go into schools and still do assemblies, and I'll cuss out the kids in the school. I'm like, don't mess with me. I'm telling you now, I'll cuss your mum, your dad, your grandma, your auntie, and all your ancestors, right? All the teachers are on the side, kind of like looking like, what the hell's going on? And I say, I'm saying that because I really want you to realize that the world out there is harsh, and people can deal with you one-to-one, but it also is an opportunity for you to be compassionate. This is why I'm the compassionate provocateur. It's an opportunity for you to be compassionate about it. And so, you know, I think about, and I'll stop in a second, but I think about there's a lot of parents and people, when I used to go to school, they say, Dave, people like Andrew Tate and so many of these other guys who are kind of like going in, you know, there's really, I don't like using the phrase because I think it's overused, but toxic masculinity, really horrible ways of being men. And I realize it not only starts when you're younger, but that stuff carries itself way into the workplace. And so a big part for me is the resilience I learned from losing my business and the resiliences that I have going into businesses now. I say to organizations, I swear, I tell them all, I use profanity. I will not, because it's part of my language. I think it's colorful. I think sometimes you can get the expressions you want out without attacking a person. And I do that, and I've done it in many boardrooms. I say, I really don't give a shit if you don't like it. This is what you're going to get. If you're going to hire me, I'm 53 years old. I've given all the Fs I'm going to give. I've been thrown away a long time. And I see, I didn't spell the people right. Been thrown away a long time. But I also do it as an opportunity for younger people, like these lovely Generation X, right? To be able to go into spaces to go, here's a precedent of somebody who's been able to hold their own, who hasn't compromised on their value, who will speak their truth, but will also surround themselves with allies. So it's not just a single conversation.
Yeah.
That makes sense?
Yeah. It's very deep.
Yeah. I went deep, man. I was trying not to go too deep, but that was it.
Yeah.
Man. Yeah.
But you know, and you know, likewise, and you know, when you were sort of talking about you know, those deep personal losses, and again, you know, people, like when people see you on LinkedIn, they'd never realise, oh, you know, David was at that point, at one point in his background, you know what I mean? And you know, and here you are. And sometimes they look at, they see the, you know, they see the shiny, happy David on LinkedIn. They don't realise, you know, David's been through this, that and the other and come through.
And that's one of the reasons why I say I don't like the phrase fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
I hate it, all right? I absolutely hate it. If any of you like it, I'm happy for you and your auntie, right? But I actually hate the phrase because we shouldn't have to fake anything.
Yeah.
We should always be in a space where we are authentic. And that authenticity comes from self, but it also means that you surround yourself with people. Like, I love what that testimony that he just gave you. I've got you. That means he doesn't have to front.
Yeah.
Because he's just like, I'm going to go in there, you say what you want, but Cheryl's got me and she will bang you up if you come and mess with me. Chat shit, get banged, right? She's got you. She's got you. Do you understand what I mean? So why would he have to fake it when he's got you?
Yeah.
Well, there's no need to do that. And for me, it's that authenticity. Obviously, again, we've shared things in here that probably we don't share out in the out space all the time. But I think it's important every now and then to drop in those stories to let people know it's not going to be that easy. It's
Yeah.
horrible looking when you're making over 500 grand and then you go and look in your bank account and there's nothing because no one's paid you.
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing. And you've got to sell your house and you've got to move it. That stuff is traumatic. But if you've made that before, you can go back again and you can get the people around you to support you to get to that space.
Yeah. Yeah. Very inspiring. Richard, challenging, pivotal moment, you know, career mistake, career challenges.
Well, I mean, apart from what I've just said about recent challenges, I kind of feel like I've had it quite smooth up until that point. It's been career progression. It's been all of those glossy things. It's been fast paced. It's felt fast paced, but I think more recently it's been about finding my voice and knowing that I'm paid to have that voice. Like the reason I'm in that room is because I'm paid to have an opinion. So have the opinion and don't be frightened about having that opinion. But yeah, my challenges have not been that great. I've been lucky. Although I need to stop saying that. I get told off for this a lot because I will say it's luck and it's not. It's just hard work. But I feel very lucky. I feel very lucky and I feel very privileged that, yeah, it's been pretty smooth sailing.
I don't think there's nothing wrong with saying that you've been lucky.
Oh, well, good. Well, there you are. I have been.
Honestly, I don't think that, because a lot of people, I will say that a lot of people will say that it's just down to hard work. And I think hard work does play a big role in it, but it's lucky. Look, I'll say this to you really quickly, that I got to be on a show on Channel 4 in 2008. Off the back of that, I got to meet Richard Branson. Off the back of that, I got to go to a TED conference. That's all freaking luck. Yes, I work hard, but you imagine the amount of people that try to do certain things and did not land in those spaces.
For sure.
So I'm able to sit in there and have banter with Richard Branson, and people are like, oh, can I have his number? I'm like, piss off, you're not getting his number, right? But the fact is being in that space, I was in the right space at the right time. That was luck. Yes, I work hard, but sometimes people do get really fortunate, and we shouldn't be afraid to say that some things that come to us, we're really lucky to have them.
Yeah.
I think that's okay, alongside the fact that you are damn good at what you do and that you do hard work. No, I don't think you should ever be afraid of being lucky, ashamed of being lucky.
Doesn't Branson have this saying that, you know, he says something like, the harder I work, the luckier I seem to get, or something?
And he's a lucky bastard.
Yeah. And there's another one, isn't there? Like luck and preparation results in opportunities or outcomes. So like your example, you had to have done a lot to have been in the spaces to have shared with Richard Branson to then get those other opportunities. But the luck part, then the preparation part, and so it all kind of comes together. And we need a bit of that.
Absolutely.
We need a bit of that. Even some of these fortuitous connections we've got around this table have come from grinding behind the scenes, and then we sort of shared space, and then, you know, so I think, and I'm agreeing with you both.
And Richard, I think, because you're quite a resilient person, I think you're a little bit like me. We're Pollyannas, right? So sometimes...
What did you call me?
Pollyanna.
That's stuck now.
You called a lot of
Richard's
things
gone.
we're not.
I wonder.
Just call me Pollyanna.
You called a lot of things we're not Pollyanna.
You have to explain a Pollyanna. Eric wants to know what a Pollyanna is.
So somebody that always sees the good in things, like we're always like super
okay.
positive.
Oh, you didn't know either?
No, I didn't know.
Sorry.
What, you're not seeing this slide? Or?
But what that means is often actually when we do go through challenges in the workplace, which we often do, we often kind of just brush them off. It's like water off a duck's back, and we often don't even, especially when you're in it at the time, you almost just, because you're just laser focused to, do you know what, I'm just going to get to the next thing. What can I learn from it and move forward?
Preach.
You know, I get that. Yeah.
Two people on this table learned what Pollyanna was today.
Literally.
Not to be confused with polyamorous, which obviously it did sound similar to. That's for a
That's a whole different podcast.
Yeah.
You can tune in next week.
After the watershed.
Okay, so this has actually been really insightful, so thanks guys. So I just want to leave the listeners with some super practical career advice. And I'm going to focus on the Gen Zers. So what career advice do you have for Gen Z? I'm going to start with Richard.
Oh, speak up, speak out, get it wrong. Don't be afraid to get it wrong. all of those things, and just and follow the passion, like follow the thing that makes you happy, and like your gut instinct is so important sometimes. And just, not sometimes, your gut instinct is important all of the time. Like, listen to it, listen to yourself, and just, follow it, lean into it.
Yeah. How would you encourage a Gen Z who maybe they go to work meetings and they feel like they can't speak up? How would you kind of encourage them to get past that and feeling more confident in the workplace?
It's just like ripping off a plaster. You've just got to do it, because the outcome is never as bad as you have made it out to be in your mind.
Yeah.
Like, in your mind, that outcome is going to be vast. But yeah, just rip off the plaster and say it.
Yeah.
Because, like I said earlier, you're paid to have an opinion. You've been brought into that space because they think that you're good at what you do and they want you to be there. So be there and be present and speak up.
Yeah.
And prepare as well. Somebody said something about rehearsing something. Oh, it was Richard
that's
about
the drama school stuff.
Yeah, so preparing before you go into, those meetings or those high stakes.
Oh yeah, that's what I
interactions.
said as we were walking down. 5 minutes early is 10 minutes late. That is that is a good one. Take that. In fact, ignore everything else I've said. Ignore everything else I've said. 5 minutes early is 10 minutes late. That is the rule. Do that. That's my advice.
And Eric, I'm going to come to you.
Yeah, so I'm in like a fortunate position because I get to work with young people, and I get to work with young people not just in one school or one setting. So, for example, on Friday I was in a private school in Cambridgeshire. Last Friday, previous to that, I was at a French school in North London, an international private school. And I also work in state schools as well. So I kind of get to see young people of the same age across different demographics as well as races. I think my big advice for young people would be awareness that there are these labels out there that exist, but completely pay them no mind. So if you think because you come from a council estate, it means that your outcomes are defined, recognize that that's how the world might look at you, but actually forget that. Don't let that limit who you could be and what you can go on to become. So yeah, I would say like challenging yourself, challenging any labels which are attached to you. Because on the flip side, sometimes people think that if you have come from money or you are in a particular kind of environment, that is easy too. Because I see those children really struggle and have a lot of identity issues because they kind of have this idea of who they are as well. So awareness and kind of like pushing against that, and during that process, like discovering what it is that you really want to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. David, I'm going to come to you.
You sure you're ready?
No.
Okay. I'm going to give you a couple of bits of advice for Gen Z. In your 20s, you don't know shit. Get over yourself. You don't know anything. Just take the experiences and just go in there and you just don't know anything. Honestly, because there are some people who go in and think you need to have it all done by the time you're 30. It doesn't work like that. Just go in there, learn, make mistakes. Just go out there and just keep on doing stuff. But you don't have to have it all together by the time you reach 30. No one has it all together. The second thing for me is build your squad. That's the thing that I think is really important that I don't think gets taught enough in the wider community in education. And what I mean by that is have individuals around you, cross-generational, who can feed into you, who can support you. So it might be a godfather, an uncle, it might be a mentor, it might be a sponsor, it might be but feed into that and feed into those bits of advice, because a lot of people have got some really good world experience, but the really good ones as well, they're really good to listen to you. Like for me, a lot of my Gen Zs, they teach me a lot of stuff. Like I listen to them, I'm like, oh, okay, what is that? Like I learned a new thing like last week. I learned what a beard is. I'll go back to offline, right? Right. In terms of relationships, I learned what a beard is. I'm like, oh, what a beard? I was like, oh, this is a beard.
Many a beard in my time, let me tell you.
But I'm like, okay, break it down to me. And I was listening to it, and I recognise that there are many of my generation, especially when it comes to things around gender identity and LGBT+ and what have you, who are really stuck in the mud and who are really resistant to change. But listening to this, I was like I'm a big LGBT+ advocate, and I'm like, you'll see me down at Pride or Black Pride, just dancing all over the place and what have you, and confusing half of my friends, right? But for me, it's important to be able to learn that sense of compassion, learn that sense of understanding. I'd also say, don't take yourself too seriously and stop taking advice from TikTok. Stop taking career advice from TikTok. It's trash. And it's only in 20 seconds. It's trash. They don't know what they're talking about. Come off it. Don't read a book. Go in the library. Don't get a Kindle. Come off of TikTok. But in all honesty, I'd also say as well, just have fun. People take themselves too seriously. Just have fun.
Yeah.
Honestly, you're not going to have it all together. When you go into work, it's going to be hard work. You are going to be asked to do. They are going to ask you to make you a cup of tea. Oh, you're not paying. Make the damn cup of tea. Make it bad. And they will never ask you again. Instead of getting upset about it, make a bad cup of tea and I learned that. Made a bad cup of tea and bad cup of coffee and no one ever asked me again. Just find a way how to pay the system.
Yeah.
But in all honesty, every single generation, whether it's Gen Z all the way up to, what am I, Gen X? I don't even know what I am, 53. What am I?
Millennials, I think.
No, I'm not millennial. We're Gen X.
You're Gen X.
Oh, Gen X.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Okay,
we're Gen X.
Come
Yeah.
to with the X thing, right? We're X-Men, all right? But at the end of the at the end of the day, we all make mistakes and we're all learning.
Yeah.
So I would just say, look, just learn, but listen listen more than you speak.
Yeah.
Listen more than you speak. But the key thing for me, don't take yourself too seriously and build your squad.
Yeah.
Priceless.
Nice. How can people like find their squad, and like what do you recommend for them? How do they find their tribe, I guess?
Yeah.
Where
You'll
do
know.
you go?
You will know
Yes.
them.
Yeah.
You will know them when you meet them.
Yeah.
There will be people that just come and go, but when you are finding your tribe, you will know them. They are the people that lift you up. They're the people that tell you that you look awful when you need to hear it.
Oh my God.
They
Your
are.
hairline is mashed up, right? Yeah.
They are the people that tell you the truth,
Yes.
even when you don't want to hear the
Yeah.
truth.
Yeah.
You will know who your tribe are
Yeah.
as you gather them,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you will keep building it.
100%.
Yeah.
And you can feed back to them as well.
Yeah.
Like my tribe will cuss me out and I don't feel bad. I do feel for a couple of seconds, but I'm thinking what my comeback is, right? But they can cuss you out. They can cuss you out. And for me, a tribe should be able to anybody in your tribe should never be afraid to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like if you're doing something wrong, tell you the truth. And likewise, if you're in my tribe, I say to people, I'm going to tell you as I see it. Like if you're carrying on trash, I'm going to tell you that, but I'm saying it from a place of love. I'm not trying to put you down. And it comes with experience, whether that tribe slides in your DMs, because that's your generation, right? Or whether it's your church group, your community group, your work group. And by the way, it's dynamic, it's fluid as well.
Yeah.
It's not static. Some of the friends you have may change because
Yeah.
your values will change over time. The way that they operate may change over time. And as you said, you'll really know in your gut, follow the gut.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Amazing. So we're gonna wrap things up now. Thank you so much for joining us. I feel like we've covered everything. We've covered, personal loss, some of the challenges. I feel that anybody that's listening to this will really be heartened, because they see, in terms of our guests, 3 really successful individuals at the top of their game. But we've all been through stuff, right? And then some of the advice, some of the gems: speak up, speak out. 5 minutes early is 10 minutes late, for sure. Awareness of the labels, and then but not not almost like feeling that you have to take the labels on and kind of like live up to those stereotypes. And the whole sort of like looking for your tribe and your squad, building your squad, and that we don't know anything. I mean, I feel like the older we get, the more we realise that we don't know anything, like all of us.
Yeah. You know nothing.
Yeah.
100%.
So that's it. Thank you so much for joining us, guys.
Pleasure.
Oh, absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks so
Enjoyed
much.
that.
Shout out to my Pollyannas.
Thank you. That's everything for today. So thank you all for listening.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
That is a wrap.
you.